In my opinion, Diddy Kong Racing is one of the best Nintendo 64 games, and just one of the best racing games in general. For being made in the 90s, it was a fantastic racing game, and it's still a great time today as well. So why didn't it get a sequel? It was one of the best-selling N64 games, and Diddy Kong was a well-known character due to him being on the Donkey Kong Country games, and now having a successful racing game, you would think they would try to follow up on this success. Well, they actually did make a sequel. Sort of. In the form of Banjo Pilot. This is a racing game on the Game Boy Advance from 2005, and you may be asking yourself, how in the world is this a sequel? Well, that's because this game was originally Diddy Kong Pilot. It was being developed by Rare, of course, and was supposed to come out around 2001 to 2002. Not too long after the original game and shortly after the launch of the GBA. But it kept getting delayed, and by late 2002, Rare was bought out by Microsoft and thus lost the rights to Diddy Kong. But they still did have the rights to a certain bear named Banjo, who was a popular video game character in the 90s, so they redid the game with different characters and Banjo Pilot was born. I personally have never even heard of this game until recently, so in this video we will be looking back at this game and determining if it was a good sequel or even just a decent GBA game. Welcome to this Banjo Pilot retrospective. Released in 2005 for the Game Boy Advance, Banjo Pilot is somehow the sequel to the beloved Diddy Kong Racing on the N64. Even though as soon as you look at the gameplay there are very few similarities. If you've ever played a Game Boy Advance game, you probably weren't super impressed with its graphics. I mean, it's a handheld from 2001, so it's not going to be the most stunning looking games you'll play. So even though it was released in 2005, Banjo Pilot is not as an impressive looking game because of the hardware limitations of the Game Boy Advance, as opposed to Diddy Kong Racing, which was on a home console, so even though it came out all the way back in '97, it still looks leagues better than Banjo Pilot. And for this reason I find it really interesting that this sequel was chosen to be on the GBA in the first place, instead of Nintendo's next home console, the GameCube. It would have actually felt like a sequel instead of more of a spin-off. But despite this, I wanted to play this game and find out if it was actually any good. I already knew it probably wasn't going to end up being a hidden gem or a classic, but if it was just a solid GBA game, then I would call it a win. So let's actually jump into the game itself. Overall, it's a pretty standard GBA racing game with Banjo characters. Now I will admit I have played very little of any Banjo game, so the characters aren't as recognizable to me as they would be in, say, a Mario game. So really the only characters I knew going into this was Banjo, Bottles, and Gruntilda. Basically what I was looking for in this game was to have decent driving and tracks. And while I say driving, the title may indicate to you that there is no driving in this game, but flying. While Diddy Kong Racing famously had carts, hovercrafts, and planes to race with, Banjo Pilot just had planes. This was basically just Rare trying to stand out a little more, considering Mario Kart was becoming very popular at this point, so just using planes instead of carts was the choice they made, and what a choice it was. Don't get me wrong, it certainly wasn't a terrible idea by any means. Kart racers were everywhere. I mean, you had Crash Bandicoot with his own racing games. So going with planes seemed to be a business decision. So was it a good decision? I don't hate the planes in this game, but I don't love them either. The flying in this game feels just fine. You can maneuver both vertically and horizontally since you're in the air, allowing for a little more control as opposed to karts. You can even do barrel rolls and flips to try to avoid other racers' items, which is nice. I think the problem is just the fact that there's no options. I don't mind planes being in the game, I mean they were very fun in Diddy Kong Racing, but that game also had two other vehicle options which helped to keep things fresh. So even if they had just planes and karts, I think that would help this game a lot and give it more variety and replayability. Also, the items in this game are kinda underwhelming. It's mostly basic stuff like boosts and weapons to target the racer in front of you and even the person in first place. There's an egg to drop behind you, and finally the golden feathers, which works like a star from Mario Kart, and Mumbo's head, which works like the lightning from Mario Kart. I would describe these items the same way I would describe this game. They work, they're fine, but I just don't feel much excitement from them, just underwhelming. And sadly, the tracks aren't much better. Just picture tracks from Mario Kart Super Circuit and make them more empty and boring. Sure, there are different themes and backgrounds, but that's about it. They're wide and empty. Not many obstacles at all, not anything interesting going on, you're just turning. To be fair, the layouts are perfectly fine, there weren't any tracks that I just hated or made me frustrated. they're all just kind of mid. I couldn't tell you the name of a single track off the top of my head because they're just not memorable. Like most kart racers, this game does have 4 race Grand Prix, but one unique aspect of Banjo Pilot is the boss battles. At the end of every Grand Prix is an aerial boss battle where you have to take down a certain character associated with that Grand Prix, and after you win, you officially win the Grand Prix and unlock that character for purchase. Pretty cool addition to the Grand Prix mode and a great idea. As far as the boss battle itself though, it's okay. Basically you just switch back and forth with who is behind you and you attack each other until someone dies. The first couple ones are cool since it's new and unexpected, but after that it gets kinda stale, considering every single boss fight is essentially the same. You start in the back, avoid the enemy's attack while trying to damage them as much as possible, and then you switch and avoid their attacks from behind, but also try to hit them with ice eggs and rinse and repeat until someone wins. That's basically every boss battle. So again, cool addition to the game, glad it's here, but they could have made them a little more different from each other, and they're not very hard either. And I mean, this whole game is pretty easy, which I didn't really complain about because I was just trying to get it over with. You can easily finish this game in a couple hours or so. And besides the Grand Prix, there are usual kart racer modes like Quick Race and Time Trials, and there's also the Jiggy Challenge, which is just racing bottles while also collecting Jiggy pieces, and if you complete this, you will unlock Bottles himself. Of course, unlocking everything is just one piece of the puzzle, because you technically have to buy the unlockable characters, tracks, modes, etc. To do that, you must go to Cheeto the Talking Book and buy these unlockables with pages. Thankfully, getting these pages is easy. Just play the game and you'll have enough to buy everything. So it's honestly just an unnecessary step to getting the unlockables, but it's not a problem either. But sadly, there is not a lot to do in this game. Very basic kart racer modes with little to no replayability, so I feel like the content part of this game is lacking. In conclusion, Banjo Pilot is a racing game for the GBA, and was technically the sequel to the beloved Diddy Kong Racing for the N64. Before playing through this game, I wanted to find out, did this feel like a legitimate sequel to one of my favorite racing games? And was it even just an average racing game? Sadly, I would say no to both. Other than Banjo being here and the fact that you're flying planes, I don't see any legitimate similarities to the predecessor. The tracks are completely different, along with the items, gameplay mechanics, and really about everything when you think about it. So no, I do not think this is a real sequel, and I'm not sure it would have been much closer if it stayed Diddy Kong Pilot. But is it a good GBA game? It's also a no on that question as well. I don't think this game is bad by any means, but I didn't really enjoy playing it that much, and I had to push myself to play through it. The tracks are boring, the gameplay is uninspired, and there's just nothing here that stood out to me as good. You might could say it would be more appreciated when it came out, and the fact that it was on the GBA, which is not a very powerful handheld at all. But it was 2005, and the DS was out along with Mario Kart DS, which flies circles around this game. So I can't even make that argument for it either. So overall, I would say this game was a failure, especially considering it only sold around 100,000 units worldwide. More people bought Finding Nemo for the GBA than this game. And sure, you could say that's because it was released in 2005 when the DS was in full swing, and while I'm sure that didn't help, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon was released in late 2005 and became the 12th best-selling GBA game. So I've officially run out of excuses for this game. Once again, I'll say it's not a terrible game, it's just not good at all in my opinion, and sadly we never got a true sequel to the amazing Diddy Kong Racing. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Let me know in the comments if you've played this game and if you enjoyed it more than I did. Also, they did do a remake for Diddy Kong Racing on the DS, so let me know if you would be interested in a video on that at all at some point. And as always, if there's a game you want to see a video on, please let me know as well. Thanks everyone for your continued support, and I'll see you in the next one.